The champagne glass slipped from Khloe Morgan's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a cascade of crystal and golden liquid. The sound cut through the elegant symphony of conversation and clinking glasses like a gunshot, drawing dozens of disapproving stares from Chicago's elite. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, dropping to her knees to collect the fragments, her cheeks burning with humiliation. The designer gowns around her rustled as guests stepped delicately away, as if poverty might be contagious. This was exactly what she'd feared when Riley begged her to cover the catering shift at the Meridian Hotel. Khloe didn't belong in this gilded world of trust funds and charity galas, where people spent more on a single evening's entertainment than she earned in 6 months of freelance graphic design work. A strong hand appeared in her peripheral vision, gathering the larger shards with practiced efficiency. She looked up to find a man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo crouched beside her, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he worked. "Happens to everyone," he said quietly, his voice carrying a slight rasp that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. "I once dropped an entire tray of champagne on the mayor's wife at a fundraiser." Khloe studied his face as he helped her stand. Strong jawline, intelligent green eyes flecked with gold, and something in his expression that suggested he understood exactly how out of place she felt. Most of the wealthy guests at these events looked through service staff as if they were invisible, but this man met her gaze directly. "Thank you," she managed, accepting the cloth napkin he offered to wipe her hands. "Though I suspect you weren't working the event when you had your champagne incident." His mouth quirked into a half-smile. "What makes you so sure?" Before she could answer, the hotel's catering manager appeared with a maintenance worker to handle the spill. Khloe found herself gently guided away from the scene by her mysterious rescuer, who seemed to move through the crowd with an easy confidence that suggested he belonged here completely. "I'm Nathan," he said, as they reached a quieter corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. "Khloe." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, suddenly self-conscious about her thrift store dress and the slight tremor still affecting her hands. "And to answer your question, you move like someone who owns the room, not someone being paid to serve drinks in it." Nathan's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a shadow crossing his features before the easy smile returned. "Perceptive? Are you always so observant?" "Occupational hazard. I'm an artist, or trying to be one. We're trained to notice details others miss." She gestured toward the dance floor where couples moved in perfect synchronization to the jazz trio's sultry melody. "Like how you've been watching them dance all evening with the same expression I probably have when I walk past the gallery district, wishing I belonged inside." He turned to follow her gaze, and she caught the faint scent of his cologne. Something expensive and masculine that made her suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "You want to dance?" she said. It wasn't a question. It's more than I should admit to a stranger. The words hung between them, charged with possibility. Khloe felt her heart hammering against her ribs as she made a decision that would have terrified her an hour ago. "Then ask me." Nathan's green eyes widened slightly. "You're working? I'm on my break." The lie came easily, justified by the intensity of the connection sparking between them. "And I love this song." Khloe woke to her phone buzzing insistently on the coffee table. The afternoon sun streaming through her studio apartment's single window. She'd fallen asleep on her second-hand couch, still wearing her dress from the gala. Mascara smeared across her cheek like war paint from the tears she'd shed. 7 missed calls from an unknown number. 3 text messages. The first message made her heart stop. "This is Nathan. Please don't delete this." The second, "I got your number from the catering company. I know how this looks, but I need to explain." The third sent just 20 minutes ago. "I'm outside your building. Apartment for B, right? Not leaving until you talk to me." Khloe shot upright, panic flooding her system. How had he found her address? More importantly, why was Nathan Cross, billionaire tech mogul, standing outside her rundown Pilsen apartment building like some lovesick teenager? She rushed to the window and peered down at the street. Sleek black Tesla sat parked illegally at the fire hydrant, and she could just make out a figure in dark clothes leaning against the driver's side door. Her phone rang. The unknown number. Against every instinct screaming at her to ignore it, she answered. Khloe, Nathan's voice carried through the speaker, rough with exhaustion. Thank God. Please. I just need 5 minutes to explain. Explain what? That you're a billionaire who was slumming it with the help for entertainment? The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but the humiliation was still too fresh, too raw. That's not what happened, and you know it. His voice held an edge of frustration. What happened between us on that dance floor was real. You felt it too. She had felt it. That was exactly the problem. Nathan, this is insane. You can't just show up at my apartment. You have a company to run. A life that exists in penthouses and boardrooms. Serve drinks and paint portraits for grocery money. You don't inhabit. The same universe? Maybe I'm tired of my universe? The quiet desperation in his voice made her chest ache. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching his distant figure below. You don't mean that. Tomorrow, you'll be back to your real life, and this will be a funny story you tell at cocktail parties about the time you danced with a waitress. Is that really what you think of me? The hurt in his question made her close her eyes. I don't know what to think. I don't know you. And let me show you who I am, please. Just coffee. One conversation. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake. Men like Nathan Cross didn't pursue women like her without ulterior motives. But something in his voice, a vulnerability that reminded her of the way he'd held her while they danced, made her waver. One coffee, she heard herself saying. The diner on 18th Street in 20 minutes. She hung up before she could change her mind. Rosita's diner was about as far from Nathan's usual environment as Khloe could manage, while still staying in the city. The red vinyl booths were cracked with age. The linoleum floor had seen better decades. The coffee came in heavy ceramic mugs that had survived countless washings. Nathan looked completely out of place in his expensive wool coat, but he'd traded his tuxedo for dark jeans and a simple sweater that somehow made him look even more devastatingly handsome. Several other patrons had already recognized him there, whispered conversations creating a buzz of excitement that made Khloe's skin crawl. This probably wasn't your best idea, she said as he slid into the booth across from her. TMZ will have photos of you slumming it in a dive diner within the hour. I don't care about TMZ. Nathan accepted the coffee the waitress poured with a grateful nod. I care about you thinking I was playing some kind of game last night, weren't you? She studied his face, searching for signs of deception. Rich man gets bored at stuffy charity gala, decides to have a little fun with the hired help? Nathan's jaw tightened. You want to know what I was thinking about when you found me by those windows? I was wondering if anyone in that room would notice if I just walked out and never came back. I was imagining what it would feel like to disappear. Completely. To start over somewhere no one knew my name, or my net worth, or my family history. His honesty hit her like a physical blow. She wrapped her fingers around her coffee mug, using the warmth to steady herself. Then you appeared, he continued, his green eyes intense and focused entirely on her. This beautiful, brave woman who looked at me like I was just a person. It's not a stock portfolio or a business opportunity or a strategic alliance. Just Nathan. And for the first time in years, I remembered what it felt like to be human. Nathan ... double quotes. I know how this sounds. No, you probably think I'm some spoiled rich boy having an existential crisis. Maybe you're right. But what I felt dancing with you was the most real thing I've experienced in a decade. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. She'd spent the night convincing herself that their connection had been one-sided, product of her own romantic fantasies. But looking at him now, seeing the vulnerability in his expression, she couldn't deny that something extraordinary had happened between them. Okay, she said quietly. Say, I believe you. Say what happened was real. Where does that leave us? You live in a penthouse? I live in a studio apartment where the heat barely works. You make decisions that affect millions of people. I can barely afford groceries. How exactly do you see this working? Nathan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. All I know is that I can't stop thinking about you. About the way you saw right through me, the way you made me feel like myself again. His thumb traced across her knuckles. I want to know everything about you, Khloe. Your art, your dreams, what makes you laugh, what keeps you up at night. She stared down at their joined hands, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was madness. Getting involved with Nathan Cross would be like stepping into a hurricane, beautiful and destructive and completely beyond her control. But God help her, she wanted to. There's something you need to understand, she said, meeting his gaze. I'm not going to change who I am for you. I won't become some perfect society girlfriend who smiles and stays quiet at your business dinners. I'm messy and opinionated, and I have strong feelings about social justice that might not align with your corporate interests. Slow smile spread across Nathan's face. I wouldn't want you any other way. I won't be your secret. If we do this, whatever this is, I won't hide in the shadows while you maintain your public image. I wouldn't ask you to. She studied his expression, searching for any sign that he didn't fully grasp what he was agreeing to. Nathan, I'm serious. Dating me will come with complications you can't imagine. The media will tear us apart. They'll dig into every aspect of my life, find every embarrassing detail, every mistake I've ever made. They'll call me a gold digger and worse. Are you prepared for that? Nathan's grip on her hand tightened. Are you? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Khloe thought about her quiet life, her small circle of friends, her dreams of artistic recognition that had nothing to do with tabloid notoriety. Getting involved with Nathan would change everything, possibly destroy everything. But looking into his eyes, seeing the hope and fear there, she realized she was already in too deep to turn back. I guess we're about to find out, she whispered. Nathan's smile was radiant. So you'll give us a chance? Before she could answer, the diner's bell chimed as the door opened. Khloe looked up to see a man with a camera entering, his lens already trained on their table. Nathan noticed her expression and turned, his face hardening as he spotted the photographer. Mr. Cross? Can you comment on your mystery brunette? Is this your new girlfriend? The questions came rapid fire as the photographer snapped pictures, other diners turning to stare at the spectacle. Khloe felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and something that might have been panic. Nathan stood smoothly, placing himself between her and the camera. No comment. Come on, Nathan. Just one statement. Who is she? How long have you been seeing her? I said. No comment. Nathan's voice carried an authority that made the photographer take a step back, but the camera kept clicking. Khloe stood, on shaking legs, her mind racing. This was it. The moment her life stopped being her own. Tomorrow, her face would be plastered across gossip websites and tabloid covers, her privacy destroyed by her association with the man she was rapidly falling. 4. Nathan turned to her, his expression apologetic and fierce. Khloe, I'm sorry. Should have anticipated this. She looked at him, then at the photographer who was still snapping pictures despite Nathan's warning. Then at the other diners who were now openly staring and whispering. Welcome to my world, Nathan said quietly. Khloe took a deep breath, feeling as though she stood at the edge of a precipice. She could run now, go back to her quiet life and her small dreams. Safe from the chaos that came with loving someone like Nathan Cross. Instead, she reached for his hand. Then I guess we'd better make it worth the headlines. The photographs hit the internet within 3 hours. Khloe stared at her laptop screen in Nathan's penthouse living room, scrolling through dozens of articles with headlines that made her stomach churn. Cross Technologies CEO's mystery woman, from rags to riches romance, and the particularly cruel billionaire's latest charity case. Don't read the comments, Nathan said from the kitchen, but his warning came too late. She was already deep in a rabbit hole of speculation and venom, from strangers who felt entitled to dissect her life. Gold Digger 2024 says, I'm obviously a prostitute, she announced, her voice artificially light. But TechBro_forever thinks I'm just a social climber who targeted you specifically, so I guess that's nice, having options for my motivation. Appeared beside her with 2 mugs of coffee, his jaw tight with controlled anger. Closed the laptop. This one's creative, she continued, unable to stop herself from reading. They've somehow found my high school yearbook photo and are comparing it to last night's pictures to prove I've had plastic surgery. Apparently my nose is suspiciously different. Khloe. Nathan's voice carried a warning. and someone's already started a betting pool on how long we'll last. The current favorite is 6 weeks, with a bonus bet on whether you'll dump me before or after I get pregnant to trap you. Nathan slammed his coffee mug down hard enough to make her jump, hot liquid sloshing onto his marble countertop. Enough. The sharpness in his tone cut through her manic recitation, and she finally looked up to see the fury blazing in his green eyes. It's not at her, she realized, but at the situation, at the cruelty of strangers who felt entitled to destroy her for the crime of existing in his orbit. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice gentler now. "I should have protected you from this. I should have thought about what it would mean to be seen with me." Khloe closed the laptop and studied his face. He looked exhausted, older than his 29 years, carrying the weight of guilt that belonged to a broken system, rather than to him personally. "Nathan, you can't control the internet. Trust me, I've tried." She attempted a smile. "Besides, some of the comments are actually hilarious. This person thinks we met at a yacht club, and this one is convinced I'm secretly a Russian spy sent to steal your technology." He didn't laugh. Instead, he moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Chicago skyline, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "My publicist has called 6 times in the last hour," he said quietly. "The board is concerned about the optics. You're suggesting a strategic retreat from public appearances until the story dies down." "Until I go away, you mean?" Nathan turned sharply. "That's not what I said. It's what they mean, though." Khloe joined him at the window, the city sprawling beneath them like a glittering circuit board. "How long before they start offering me money to disappear? How long before you start wondering if they're right?" "That will never happen." The certainty in his voice should have comforted her, but Khloe had spent enough time in the real world to know that intentions rarely survived contact with sustained pressure. "Your mother called too," she said, watching his reflection in the glass. "I could hear her voice through the phone when you stepped onto the balcony. She didn't sound thrilled about your choice in companions." Nathan's jaw tightened. "My mother has opinions about everything. Most of them are wrong. Not all of them." He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, Khloe felt the first crack in the foundation they'd been trying to build. "She thinks you're using me," he admitted. "Finally, she thinks I'm having some kind of breakdown, acting out against the family legacy by dating someone so far outside our social circle. And what do you think?" Nathan turned to face her fully, his hands cupping her face with gentle intensity. "I think I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies the hell out of me." The words hit her like a physical blow, equal parts devastating and exhilarating. She'd felt it too, the way her heart raced whenever he looked at her, the way her world had started to revolve around his smile, his touch, his rare moments of complete honesty. "Nathan, ... I know it's too soon. I know this is all happening too fast. But I need you to know that whatever happens, whatever pressure gets applied, what I feel for you is real." She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring all of her confusion and hope and terror into the contact. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her closer as if he could somehow shield her from the chaos swirling around them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Khloe rested her forehead against his chest. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And you're right, it's terrifying. Because I can see exactly how this ends, Nathan. The pressure will build, your family will. Keep pushing, the media will keep digging, and eventually you'll realize that being with me costs more than it's worth. That will never happen. It happened to your brother." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Nathan went very still in her arms. She'd done her research after the coffee shop incident, diving deep into the Cross family history. Nathan's older brother Marcus had caused a scandal 5 years earlier by falling in love with his children's nanny, single mother from a working-class background. The relationship had lasted 8 months before the pressure from family media and business associates became too much. Marcus had ended things quietly, paid for the woman to relocate to another state, and married a banking heiress within 2 years. "That's different," Nathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it? Or is it just what happens when people from our different worlds try to build something together?" Nathan pulled back to look at her, his green eyes fierce with determination. "I'm not my brother, and you're not Marcus's ex. You're stronger than they were. Are we? We've known each other for 3 days, Nathan. 3 days. And already your entire life is in upheaval because of me. My life was already in upheaval. No. The first thing that's made sense in years? Before Khloe could respond, Nathan's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. My father, he said. He never calls unless someone's died or the company is in crisis. Answer it. Nathan hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. Dad. His voice was carefully neutral, even from across the room. Khloe could hear the older man's raised voice, though she couldn't make out the words. Nathan's expression grew progressively stonier as he listened, occasionally interjecting with sharp responses. She's not a distraction. No, I won't end it, 'cause it's my life, not the company's. More shouting from the phone. I don't care what. The board thinks yes. I understand the implications. No, that's not happening. Nathan met Khloe's eyes across the room, and she saw the exact moment he made a decision that would change everything. Actually, Dad, there's something you should know. I'm in love with her, and if the board has a problem with that, they can find a new CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the shouting resumed, louder and more furious than before. Nathan listened for another minute before hanging up without saying goodbye. Well, he said, tossing his phone onto the couch, I guess we're about to find out exactly how much power Cross has when he goes against the family legacy. Khloe stared at him, torn between admiration for his stand and terror at what it might cost them both. Nathan, what did you just do? Chose you, he said simply. I chose us. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Outside the penthouse windows, the city sparkled in the growing darkness, beautiful and indifferent to the two people whose lives had just irrevocably changed. Course! Somewhere in the distance, Khloe could hear sirens wailing, sound that seemed to echo the chaos building around them. She reached for Nathan's hand, their fingers intertwining as they stood facing the uncertain future together. Together, she repeated, hoping they were strong enough to survive what was coming. The emergency board meeting was called for 7 a.m. on a gray Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after Nathan had told his father he would choose love over legacy. Khloe waited in her apartment, pacing the small space like a caged animal while Nathan faced the tribunal that would decide both their fates. Her phone buzzed with a text from Riley, who had been following the media circus with fascination and horror. Channel 7 is running a special report on you tonight. They interviewed 3 of your ex-boyfriends and your landlord.
Hi.
I'm so sorry. Babe. Khloe closed her eyes, fighting back the wave of nausea that had become her constant companion. The media-feeding frenzy had intensified rather than died down, with new revelations about her life appearing daily. Her financial struggles, her father's abandonment when she was 12, her college dropout status due to unpaid tuition, even her brief stint in therapy after her mother's death. Nothing was sacred, nothing was private. The worst part was watching Nathan suffer alongside her. His jaw grew tighter with each passing day, his sleep more restless. Yesterday she'd found him standing on his balcony at 3 a.m., staring out at the city with an expression of such profound exhaustion that it broke her heart. Her phone rang. Nathan's number. How did it go? She asked without preamble.
About.
As well as expected. His voice was flat, drained of emotion. I'm out. The words hit her like a physical blow. Yes. What do you mean, out? The board voted unanimously to remove me as CEO effective immediately. They're citing concerns about my judgment and the negative publicity affecting company stock. Price is a bitter laugh. Apparently my father abstained from the vote. Suppose that counts as family loyalty in the Cross household? Khloe sank onto her couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Nathan, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No. His voice sharpened. This is their fault. Their inability to see past their own prejudices. Their obsession with maintaining an image that was never real to begin with. Get your company, everything you built. ... I didn't build Cross Technologies. I inherited it, just like I inherited everything else in my life. Maybe it's time I figured out who I am when I'm not playing the role of dutiful heir. The words should have sounded liberating, but Khloe could hear the pain underneath Nathan's defiant tone. Cross Technologies had been his life's work, even if he'd never chosen it freely. Losing it was like losing a limb. "Where are you now?" she asked. "Driving. I need to think." "Come here. We can think together. Khloe. He paused, and in that silence, she heard everything he wasn't saying. "Maybe I should stay at my place tonight. Give us both some space to process this." Fear lanced through her chest. "You're pulling away from me. I'm trying to figure out what comes next. For both of us. What comes next is that we face this. Together like we said we would. That was before I lost everything. You didn't lose everything. You lost a job. Horrible, suffocating job that was making you miserable. It was my job, Khloe. My identity, my purpose. And now it's gone. Along with my trust fund, my inheritance, and probably my family." His voice cracked slightly. "I have nothing left to offer you. You have yourself. That's all I ever wanted. Is it enough? When the novelty wears off, when reality sets in, will it be enough that I love you but can't give you the life you deserve?" The question hung between them like a live wire. Khloe thought about her empty refrigerator, her overdue bills, her dreams of artistic recognition that seemed more impossible with each passing day. Dathan was asking if she could love him without his money. But the real question was whether either of them could survive the chaos that loving each other had created. "I need to see you," she said finally. "Whatever we decide, we decide it together, face to face." He was quiet for so long she thought he might have hung up. "Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Khloe spent those 20 minutes staring at herself in the bathroom mirror, practicing the speech she knew she had to give, the words that would set him free and destroy her heart in the process. When Nathan arrived, he looked like a man who had aged a decade in a single day. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his green eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and grief. She wanted to run to him, to hold him until the pain receded. Instead, she stayed by the window, arms wrapped around herself. "For protection, I've been thinking too," she said without preamble. "About what you said about having nothing left to offer." Nathan stopped in the middle of her small living room, his body tense with anticipation. "The thing is," Khloe continued, "you're right. Not about having nothing to offer, but about the cost of being together. Look what 1 week has done to both our lives. Your family has disowned you. You've lost your career, and I've become a public spectacle. How much worse will it get in a month, a year, Khloe? I love you." The words came out fierce and final. "Love you. More than I thought I could love another person. But love isn't always enough to overcome the obstacles in its path." Nathan's face went pale. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe your family is right. Maybe we're from worlds too different to bridge. Maybe trying to be together is selfish when it's destroying everything else we care about. So you want to end this?" His voice was completely flat now, drained of all emotion. Khloe felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she forced herself to remain steady. "I want you to be happy. I want you to have a life that doesn't require you to choose between love and everything else that matters to you, or everything that matters to me." The raw honesty in his words nearly broke her resolve. She turned away from him, staring out at the Chicago skyline that had become the backdrop to both their beginning and their ending. "That's the problem, Nathan. I can't be your everything. It's too much pressure, too much responsibility. What happens when the novelty wears off, and you realize what you've sacrificed for someone you've known for 10 days? That won't happen. It already is happening." She turned back to face him, letting him see the pain she'd been trying to hide. "You're different than you were a week ago. Harder, more closed off. The media attention, the family pressure, the loss of your position, it's changing you. It's changing us." Nathan stepped closer, his hands reaching for her before dropping to his sides. "So we fight harder. We prove them all wrong. At what cost? Your relationship with your parents. Your brother, your entire life's work." She shook her head. "I won't be responsible for you losing everything. I chose to lose it. I chose you, and I'm choosing to let you go." The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Nathan stared at her for a long moment, his green eyes searching her face for any sign that she might change her mind. This isn't what you want, he said quietly. I can see it in your eyes. You're doing this because you think it's noble, sacrificing your happiness for mine. Maybe I'm doing it because I'm scared. Because I looked into the future and saw myself becoming someone I don't recognize, someone who measures her worth by her association with a powerful man. Her voice broke slightly. I've worked too hard to build my own identity to lose it now. Nathan was quiet for a long time, studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed and raw. You're probably right, he said finally. About the cost. About the impossibility of making this work long term. I just thought, I hoped we might be different. So did I. He moved toward the door, then stopped with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, these 10 days with you were the most real I've ever felt in my life. Whatever happens next, I'll never regret that. Neither will I. Nathan opened the door, then paused again. Khloe, yeah. When this all dies down, when the media moves on to the next scandal and life goes back to normal, do you think we might have another chance? In a different time, a different situation? The hope in his voice nearly undid her completely. She wanted to lie, to give him something to hold on to, but she owed him the truth. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. He nodded. Once, accepting her answer with a grace that made her love him even more. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in her small apartment with the echoes of what might have been. Khloe sank onto her couch and finally let the tears come, great heaving sobs that seemed to tear her apart from the inside. Outside her window, the city continued its relentless pulse, indifferent to one more broken heart among its millions. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Ms. Morgan, this is Catherine Cross, Nathan's mother. I believe we need to talk. The Drake Hotel, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. Khloe stared at the message, a new kind of dread settling in her stomach. Even in ending things with Nathan, she couldn't escape the gravitational pull of his family's influence. She typed back, I'll be there. Whatever Catherine Cross wanted to discuss, Khloe suspected it would change everything once again. The only question was whether she had any fight left in her to face it. She knocked softly, then louder, when there was no response. Nathan, it's me. I know you're in there and I know you probably don't want to see me, but I have something important to tell you. Silence. Your mother and I had tea today, she told me some interesting things about your departure from Cross Technologies. Things I think you deserve to know. She heard movement inside, footsteps approaching the door. Khloe. His voice was muffled but audible. What are you talking about? Open the door and I'll explain everything. More silence, then the sound of locks turning. Nathan appeared in the doorway, and Khloe's heart clenched at the sight of him. He looked like he hadn't slept or eaten since leaving her apartment. His hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled, his green eyes hollow with grief. What did my mother tell you? He asked without preamble. Khloe held up the documents. That you're not as broke as you think you are. And that your exile from the company wasn't exactly what it seemed. Nathan stared at the papers, confusion replacing some of the pain in his expression. I don't understand. Can I come in? It's going to take a while to explain. He stepped aside, and she entered the penthouse that had become familiar during their brief time together. The living room was a disaster zone of empty takeout containers and crumpled papers, evidence of a man trying to figure out how to rebuild his entire life. Nathan, sit down, please. He perched on the edge of his couch, every line of his body tense with anticipation. Khloe sat across from him and began to explain everything Catherine had revealed. The orchestrated board meeting, the deliberate media manipulation, the secret trust fund that would ensure his financial security. With each revelation, Nathan's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been rage. They destroyed my life to save it, he said when she finished. They put us both through hell because they decided I needed to be free. They put us through hell because they love you and wanted you to choose happiness over obligation. Khloe reached for his hands, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. Nathan, you chose me. Over everything else in your life, you chose love. You have any idea how extraordinary that is? It doesn't feel extraordinary. It feels like I lost everything. You lost a job that was making you miserable and a family role that never fit. But you gained something more valuable. the knowledge that you're capable of choosing your own path. Even when it's terrifying. Nathan was quiet for a long time, staring down at their joined hands. "Where does this leave us?" he asked finally. "Yesterday you told me we were too different, that love wasn't enough to overcome the obstacles. Yesterday I thought those obstacles were insurmountable. Today I learned that the biggest ones were illusions created by people who were trying to help in the most misguided way possible." She squeezed his fingers. "Nathan, I love you. Not your money, not your family name, not your position in society. I love the man who danced with me like I was the only woman in the world. I love the person who sees through facades and values authenticity above all else. I love you for choosing me when it cost you everything. Even though it didn't actually cost me everything, especially because you didn't know that when you made the choice." Nathan lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss. To her knuckles, "So what now? Do we try again, knowing what we know? We try again, knowing that love is messier and more complicated than fairy tales make it seem. But that it's worth fighting for anyway." Khloe smiled through the tears she hadn't realized were falling. "We figure out who we are together when we're not running from manufactured crises. And if new obstacles appear, then we face them together. Really together this time, with honesty and trust and the knowledge that we chose each other freely." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her with a desperation that spoke of how close they'd come to losing everything.
"I love Khloe
Morgan," he whispered against her hair. "I love your strength and your art and your refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. I love you too, Nathan Cross. All of you, including the parts that are still figuring out who you want to become." They held each other in the middle of his destroyed living room, two people who had walked through fire and chosen to find each other on the other side. Outside the penthouse windows, Chicago glittered in the afternoon sun. A city full of possibilities for those brave enough to reach for them. 6 months later, Khloe's first solo art exhibition opened at a small gallery in Lincoln Park. The paintings were portraits of people in transition. A businessman leaving his corporate job, a mother returning to school, an elderly man learning to dance after his wife's death. The centerpiece was a self-portrait titled "The Moment of Choosing," depicting a woman standing at a crossroads with her face turned toward the light. Nathan stood beside her as critics and collectors examined her work, his hands steady and warm in hers. He'd used part of his trust fund to start a non-profit supporting artists from underprivileged backgrounds, and his joy in the work was evident to anyone who knew him. "No regrets?" he asked softly as they watched a young couple debate purchasing one of her smaller pieces. "Only that it took us so long to figure out that love isn't about perfection," she replied. "It's about choosing each other, again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." They stood together in the gallery, surrounded by her art and his support. Two people who had learned that the best love stories aren't about finding someone who completes you, but about finding someone who inspires you to complete yourself. As the evening wound down and the last visitors filtered out into the Chicago night, Khloe realized that fairy tales weren't about perfect endings. They were about imperfect people making brave choices and building something beautiful from the pieces of their broken expectations. She looked at Nathan, this man who had risked everything for love and found himself in the process, and knew that their story was just beginning. The end. Catherine Cross was exactly what Khloe had expected. Perfectly coiffed silver hair, understated diamonds, and the kind of poise that came from generations of inherited confidence. She sat in the Drake Hotel's elegant afternoon tea service like a queen holding court, her sharp blue eyes assessing Khloe with the precision of a surgeon examining a tumor. "Ms. Morgan, thank you for coming." Her voice carried the cultured tones of private schools and country clubs. "Please, sit." Khloe settled into the antique chair across from her, acutely aware of how her simple black dress and thrift store purse looked in this opulent setting. "Mrs. Krause, I assume you want to discuss Nathan?" Among other things, Catherine poured tea from an ornate silver service, her movements graceful and deliberate. "I understand you ended your relationship with my son yesterday, that's right." "Good. That shows wisdom beyond your years." Catherine's smile was razor sharp. "I'm prepared to make that sacrifice worth your while. Here it comes, Khloe thought. The payoff. The final indignity. I'm not interested in your money, Mrs. Cross. Everyone is interested in money, dear. It's simply a matter of finding the right amount. Catherine slid an envelope across the marble table. $500,000. More than enough to pursue your artistic dreams without the burden of financial stress. All you have to do is stay away from Nathan and keep quiet about your relationship. Khloe stared at the envelope without touching it. And if I refuse, then you'll discover just how persistent the media can be when properly motivated. That unfortunate incident in college when you were arrested for trespassing during a protest, your mother's struggles with addiction, your father's gambling debts. These stories have a way of finding their way into print. The threats hung in, the air like poison gas. Khloe felt a familiar rage building in her chest, the same fury that had driven her to stand up to bullies her entire life. You know what, Mrs. Cross? You can take your money and your threats and shove them both. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. I ended things with Nathan because I love him, not because I'm afraid of you. Catherine's composed mask slipped slightly. Ms. Morgan, please, sit down. You're making a scene. Good. Maybe it's time someone in your family experienced a little public embarrassment. Khloe leaned forward, placing her palms on the table. You want to know the real tragedy here? Nathan is an incredible man who could have changed the world if you hadn't spent his entire life convincing him he was nothing more than a company asset. You don't understand the pressures of our world, the responsibilities that come with the Cross name. I understand that you raised a son who thinks he has to choose between love and duty because you never showed him they could coexist. Khloe straightened, feeling stronger than she had in days. Also understand that you're so terrified of losing control that you'd rather destroy his happiness than admit you might be wrong about me. Catherine's blue eyes flashed with something that might have been respect. You have more spine than I gave you credit for. Was that supposed to be a compliment? It was an observation. Catherine set down her teacup with deliberate care. Me something, Ms. Morgan. If I offered you a way to be with Nathan without destroying his future, would you take it? Khloe felt her heart skip a beat. What are you talking about? Sit down. Please. Against her better judgment, Khloe resumed her seat. Catherine studied her for a long moment, as if weighing a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. The board didn't remove Nathan from his position, she said finally. We did. What? Do you mean we? His father and I? We orchestrated the entire thing. Catherine's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. The emergency meeting, the vote of no confidence, even the media leaks that intensified the pressure. It was all carefully planned. Khloe felt the blood drain from her face. Why would you do that to your own son? Because Nathan has been miserable for years, trapped in a role he never wanted but felt obligated to fulfill. He was slowly dying inside that corporate prison, and we were too proud to admit we'd created it. Catherine's composure cracked slightly, revealing genuine anguish underneath. The night he called his father and chose you over the company, I realized we'd pushed him to a breaking point. He was willing to sacrifice everything for love, which meant he'd never truly loved his life to begin with. So you destroyed it for him. We freed him from it. There's a difference. Khloe struggled to process this revelation. Vote the public humiliation ... theater. It's necessary to make his departure seem inevitable rather than voluntary. Catherine reached into her purse and withdrew a second envelope. This contains the real reason I asked you here today. With shaking hands, Khloe opened the envelope and found several official-looking documents. A trust fund, Catherine explained. Established in Nathan's name 25 years ago, completely separate from Cross Technologies. He has no idea it exists. $50 million, enough to ensure he never has to work another day in his life if he chooses not to. I don't understand. If this exists, why didn't you tell him about it when he was struggling with the decision? Because he needed to make that choice freely, without the safety net of family money influencing his judgment. He had to choose love over security, passion over duty, you over everything else he'd ever known. Catherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. And he did. My son chose love, Ms. Morgan. Do you have any idea how proud that makes me? Khloe stared at the documents, her mind reeling. Why are you telling me this? Because Nathan is going to need someone by his side as he figures out who he wants to become now that he's free from our expectations. Someone who loves him for himself, not his bank account or his family name. Catherine leaned forward. I was wrong about you. You're not a gold digger or a social climber. You're a woman who loves my son enough to walk away from him when you thought it was in his best interest. That kind of selflessness is rare in any social circle, Mrs. Cross. Catherine. And before you say anything else, you should know that Nathan is currently at his apartment, convinced that his life is over and that he'll never see you again. He has no idea about the trust fund, no idea that his exile from the company was orchestrated, and no idea that his parents actually approve of his choice. She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. I believe someone needs to enlighten him. Khloe clutched the documents to her chest, hope and terror warring. In her heart, what if I hurt him again? What if we're still too different, too complicated? Then you'll figure it out together. That's what love is, Ms. Morgan. Not the absence of obstacles, but the commitment to overcome them side by side. Catherine stood gracefully, placing enough money on the table to cover their tea service and then some. There's a car waiting outside. To take you to Nathan's building, the driver has been instructed to wait as long as necessary. She paused at Khloe's shoulder. For what it's worth, I think my son chose well. Don't make him wait too long to discover he was right. 40 minutes later, Khloe stood outside Nathan's penthouse door, trust fund documents in one hand and her heart in her throat. She'd used her key to get up to his floor, the same key he'd given her during their brief, intense week together.